Welcome to Beta Goodbyes. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, nearing the edges of extinction. We'll share species research, information, and conservation proposals, and then we'll spend part of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll perform a soundscape of gentleness, of reflection, of delight, and maybe of grieving. Without conservation activity and significant societal shift, many of these species may not survive the 21st century. And so perhaps we might acknowledge their journey with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, and with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the Manapany Day Gecko. The Manapany Day Gecko is a critically endangered reptile native to Reunion Island, a French department in the Indian Ocean, roughly 1,000 miles east of the African coast. Its scientific name is Phelsuma inexpectata, and it was first described in 1966. The Manapany Day Gecko is small for a day gecko, measuring just about 5 inches nose to tail, with about 3 of those inches being tail. Their body is flat and cylindrical with a smooth texture covered in tiny, non-overlapping scales. The ventral scales, this is the bottom side, the belly, are generally a creamy white-yellowish color, while the lateral scales, that's the sides, and their feet and legs are an olive greenish tan. And the dorsal scales, that's the top side, the back, and the tail itself are primarily a bright, like green apple green. Their back and much of the tail are marked with reddish-brown spots, and the head and neck feature super colorful and intricate scale patterns. These intricate scale patterns are unique to each individual, though generally we see a light bluish or white coloring at the tip of the snout and a very thin blue band above the mouth, then a thick red stripe across the front of their nostrils that continues back past the eyes. And above the nostrils on the forehead, there's a bright cyan blue arch. Then farther up the forehead is another red horizontal band that connects in like a T shape to a longer red stripe that runs vertical down the neck and upper back. The top of the head and neck have these complex, undulating vertical stripes that fade into green as it goes further down the back. So there's that red center stripe, then green stripes on each side, then bluish white stripes on each side of those, and then red and black stripes outside that. The patterns are beautiful. And kind of joyful. These are like candy shop colors on this tiny, smooth, squiggly being. The Manapany Day Gecko has 4 limbs with 5 digits each digit ending in a pad-like shape with lamellae on the underside. Lamellae is a thin structure of millions of microscopic hair-like forms made of beta-keratin, which allows for remarkable adhesion. The gecko can climb and cling to vertical surfaces, leaves, trunks, branches, and even windows, walls, and upside down on ceilings. To understand how this works, we have to get into some physics and molecular chemistry that is way outside of my expertise. But I'll try to break this down. So gecko foot adhesion relies on what are called van der Waals forces operating at the atomic level. This is, at least for me, wildly complicated, but we'll try to go for a simplified version here. So everything is made of atoms. Atoms are made of a positively charged nucleus with negatively charged electrons swirling around it. The electrons are constantly, randomly moving. And so, for a tiny fraction of a second, more electrons might randomly end up on one side of an atom, creating a bit of magnetism. One side becomes a little negative, and the other side becomes a little positive. This is called a dipole. This dipole, then, can affect nearby atoms. It's electromagnetic attraction and repulsion causing the electrons in nearby atoms to also shift, resulting in another dipole aligned in opposite polarity to the first. So these are brief instances of tiny, tiny atomic level magnetic attractions. So now let's imagine this happening between the atoms on the gecko's foot and the atoms on the surface it's sticking to. These singular dipole-to-dipole magnetic forces are minuscule and weak, way too weak to hold anything up. But the gecko's toe pads are covered in these millions of microscopic hair structures. So when the gecko places their foot down, these hairs, in contact with the surface, creates millions of dipoles. A kind of weak magnetic pole, but between a huge number of atoms simultaneously. And so the sheer quantity of these small attractions adds up to a strong total force, a force strong enough to hold up the gecko's body weight. And then to move, they peel their toe pads away from the surface, changing the angle of the microscopic hairs, reducing the points of contact between their foot and the surface incrementally, breaking the magnetic bonds allowing them to lift their foot and take another step. So it's not like sticky goo, that's a chemical bond, or like a suction cup, that's air pressure. It's about these millions of tiny flexible points of contact resulting in billions of atomic level dipole to dipole weak magnetic attractions, which altogether creates a strong overall grip. We live in a remarkable universe. Okay, so back to our general overview of Manapany Day Gecko morphology. So back to front, tail, hind limbs, torso, forelimbs, neck, and head. The head is wedge-shaped with 2 nostrils at the tip of the snout for respiration and olfaction. That's breathing and smelling. They have a wide mouth with small sharp teeth and a long, agile tongue. On the roof of the mouth is their nasal organ, which is a kind of secondary scent sensing system. The gecko uses its tongue to pull in airborne or surface-borne particles, transferring them to the nasal organ to sense prey, predators, and pheromonal social signals. They also use their tongue and mouth for vocalizations, communicating via chirps and clicks. They have large, black, round, protruding eyes with round pupils adapted for daylight. They do not have eyelids. So instead of blinking, their eyes are protected by a transparent membrane called a brilla. And to keep the brilla clean and moist, gecko regularly lick their eyes with their long, agile tongue. Behind the eyes, the gecko has 2 small oval ear openings covered by a thin membrane of skin, not scales. This membrane allows sound to reach their eardrum. A recent study also suggests that gecko have a secondary sound sensing system in their inner ear to detect low frequency vibrations. So they can both hear airborne sound waves and also detect vibrations like rumbles in the ground. These are frequencies below their airborne auditory range. The Manapany Day Gecko is in part so named because it is diurnal, meaning it's most active during the day. It is ectothermic, that's cold-blooded, and uses sunlight to regulate its temperature. It's often found basking on leaves, tree limbs, and sometimes coastal rocks. It's primarily arboreal, though, generally sticking to palms, tall ferns, and coconut trees in its habitat. The Manapany Day Gecko is omnivorous, preying on insect and other invertebrate like ants, moths, crickets, and millipedes. They also eat sap, fruit, and nectar and pollen. They are vital pollinators in their habitat, sipping nectar from flowers, collecting pollen on their snouts, and sometimes successfully transferring that pollen when they sip at a different individual's flowers. In areas where their habitat has been encroached upon by human development, they also have developed opportunistic foraging behaviors, observed eating domesticated fruit on plantations, and even sugary processed foods like jam and soda pop. Manapany Day Gecko are generally solitary outside of the breeding season and do not form family units or long-term monogamous pair bonds. Females may mate with multiple males during a breeding season. Breeding season is roughly September to March, so this is end of winter through end of summer in the southern hemisphere. Courtship behaviors have been observed in the Manapany Day Gecko, with males performing lateral head bobs and tail wiggles while cautiously moving towards females. If she's receptive, she might reciprocate with similar, subtle movements. If she is not receptive, she will lift her forelimbs and make threatening tongue flicks. When a breeding pair matches, the male will hold the female by the neck and wrap his tail under hers to align their sex organs for copulation. And after fertilization, the female will lay her eggs in communal nesting sites. So multiple females all sharing a single egg-laying location. And the gecko have been observed reusing the same communal laying sites over multiple seasons. The female will lay a clutch of 2 eggs, but will mate with different individuals and lay up to 6 clutches in a single breeding season. The eggs are sticky, and laying sites include the leaves and crevices of screw pine trees, fronds and trunks of latan palms and coconut trees, and in the fissures and cavities of coastal rocks that are surrounded by native vegetation. The eggs incubate for 2 to 4 months, and hatchlings are precocial, meaning they can move, feed, and fend for themselves at birth. There is no parental care after hatching. The young reach sexual maturity in about 2 years, and estimated Manapany Day Gecko lifespan is 8 to 10 years. In the dream, interspecies communication. Oh, in the dream, to learn the chirps and clicks and taste the pheromones and understand the dance. To commune across the chasm of beinghood in the rich language of another. To be active witness to the wisdom and to the dreams of distant kin in the dream. The Manapany Day Gecko is native to Reunion Island, a French department in the Indian Ocean, about 1,000 miles east of the African coast. Here, roughly 50 physically isolated small subpopulations of gecko are confined to a 7-mile-long narrow coastal strip on the southern edge of the island, less than 300 feet from the sea, near Manapany-les-Bains and St. Joseph. This region is referred to as the Sud Sauvage, that means the wild south, where basalt cliffs formed from ancient volcanic eruption meet the Indian Ocean. The gecko inhabit the coastal greenery and dry-tolerant vegetation of these coastal cliffs, found on palms, fruit trees, screw pines, and tall ferns. The Manapany Day Gecko has also shown some adaptation to human-modified landscapes. It's been observed within papaya and banana plantations, on fences and mailboxes, and even inside on the walls and ceilings of people's homes. This is a tropical coastal bioregion with a distinct wet and dry season. The warm, wet season is roughly December to April, with highs in the mid-80s Fahrenheit and lows in the mid-70s, with roughly 45 inches of rainfall during that period. Then in the 7 months of the dry season, highs are in the mid-70s, lows are in the mid-60s, and there's only about 15 inches of rain. The Manapany Day Gecko shares its island home with stag beetle, Reunion little mastiff bat, golden cane palm, daisy tree, sea lettuce, coconut tree, Indian mulberry, passion flower, red latan, Reunion harrier, Reunion gray white-eye, tropical almond, governor's palm, Brazilian pepper tree, Mauritius hemp, beach morning glory, mascarene petrel, fishtail palm, sea grape, butterfly palm, screw pine, reunion bulbul, and many, many more. Human development resulting in habitat destruction and habitat modification is an historic and persistent threat. There is fossil evidence that suggests the Manapany Day Gecko once had a much larger population, farther spread around the west and south of the island. But today, urban encroachment, agricultural infrastructure, and tourism development has confined the species to its narrow, restricted range on the southern coast. Relatedly, human-introduced invasive plants are outcompeting the native coastal vegetation upon which the Manapany Day Gecko relies, so further reducing the gecko's viable habitat. Additionally, many human-introduced invasive animal species now prey upon the day gecko, including wolf snake, birds like the red-whiskered bulbul and the common myna, mammals like black rat, the house mouse, the Asian house shrew, and even insects like the venomous huntsman spider and the yellow crazy ant, which sprays acid that can injure adult gecko and kill juveniles. The ants also prey upon the gecko's eggs. Human-induced climate change is a looming threat. Climate models suggest a roughly 4-degree Fahrenheit rise in temperature and decrease in rainfall in their habitat by the end of the 21st century, which will obviously affect the availability of food and will impact the gecko's reproductive success. Fortunately, there are conservation actions in place to help protect the Manapany Day Gecko. The species has local legal protection, and since 2012, habitat restoration efforts have been removing invasive shrubs and replanting native palms in 2 of these subpopulation habitats. And since 2013, a community outreach program has been encouraging locals to avoid harming the gecko and their eggs, to avoid pesticide use, and through a novel seedling distribution program, encouraging locals to maintain native vegetation, plant indigenous species, and to use private gardens and public green spaces as informal gecko sanctuaries. Nevertheless, the Manapany Day Gecko has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 2021. And their population is currently in decline. A 2011 survey counted less than 5,000 individuals, and more recent estimates suggest that less than 1,000 Manapany Day Gecko remain in the wild. Information for today's show about the Manapany Day Gecko was compiled from Amphibia Reptilia, Volume 44, Number 2, from the Bulletin de la Société Mathématique de France, Volume 126, from the Bulletin de la Société Herpetologique de France, Volume 132, and Volume 185, from the Bulletin Phaethon, Number 53, from Cahiers Scientifiques de l'Océan Indien Occidental, Number 2, from Current Biology, Volume 34, Issue 21, from Herpetological Review, Volume 52, from the IUCN, from the Journal of Tropical Ecology, Volume 29, Number 3, from Molecular Biology Reports, Volume 50, from Salamandra, Volume 58, Number 2, and from Wikipedia. For more information about Manapany Day Gecko conservation, see the Indian Ocean Nature Association. In French, this is the Association Nature Océan Indienne at natureoceanindian.org. Okay, so in a moment, I would like to perform some music in hopes of opening a space to be in contemplation of the other lives with whom we share our fragile earth. I do not intend to put meaning upon or extract meaning from the Manapany Day Gecko. Instead, I want this music to be an expression of my awe and be a moment of pause to consider my relationship with other life, in particular, as some of that life may near extinction. And so I will sit in the space of sound and awe and reflection, and I warmly invite you to join me. I honor the life force of the Manapany Day Gecko. I will commit its human name to my record. I am so grateful to have shared time on our planet with this remarkable being. And I lament the ways in which I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. I grieve. And so, in the name of the Manapany Day Gecko, I pledge to reduce my consumption, my carbon footprint, and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and my inactions. I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin and their habitat by individuals, corporations, and governments. I forever pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Bad at Goodbyes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin.